Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Music, Brain, and Society Faculty Talks. I am delighted to introduce you all to Dr. Laura Cirelli, who's an assistant professor in the psychology department at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, and the director of the Tempo Lab. Her research explores how infants direct prosociality towards partners, how singing can influence the caregiving-infant relationship, and how rhythm perception and production develop across infancy and childhood. Her research has been recognized by many international awards, such as the ICIS Early Researcher Award, and her work has been featured on news outlets such as The Nature of Things at CBS and National Public Radio's Hidden Brain. From a personal level, I have admired Laura's work for a long time and really the rigorous methods that she uses to understand such an important period of development and kind of inform all of us in relation of prosociality and rhythm development. So keep it short. We're going to have about 45 minutes of the presentation, and I'm going to ask if you all can keep your questions for the end. Laura will have some time to answer the last 15 minutes or so. Welcome, Laura. Wonderful to have you.
Well, thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Saul, and the invitation. Okay, let me get this sharing stuff happening. It's very nice to be here virtually. I'm sure you are all in a warmer climate than I am here. We're still in the dead of winter. Okay, does that?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, let me make it a little bigger. Okay, great.
Perfect.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So today I'm talking about babies and music, to no one's surprise, I think. And I think that this talk might have ended up being a bit of a data dump, but hopefully that's fun for you guys. But yeah, I really frame my research program around thinking about these questions of how we share music together. Like, why do humans invest so much time and energy and money into musical pursuits? And one of the potential reasons is because it is this thing that brings us together. It helps us communicate, helps us regulate our emotions, and helps us feel connected to each other. I think I don't have to convince any of you. That's maybe a better opener for a talk that's not already to people who have drank the music Kool-Aid. But I think it's just worth highlighting that one of the reasons to ask this question from a developmental perspective, this like why music question, is because humans are really the only species who are doing this large suite of musical things, pulling all of these musical abilities together. And not only do we have the ability to do these musical things like dance and sing and play instruments and just like listen to music and make predictions about it, we're also doing it joyfully and frequently. So if it's something human, then we should start to see evidence of the importance of music emerging really early in life. And so that's really the reason why I wanted to ask these questions with a tiny population. So you might, yeah, I figured I'd start with this really old stuff. So some of my really early work in my dissertation at McMaster University addressed this question of whether or not music can be this social medium really early in life by exploring the effects of moving in synchrony with others. And at the time, my PhD supervisor, Laurel Trainer, and I, we were reading a lot about how research with adults and even older children was showing that if people move together, then they like each other more and they might even collaborate a little bit more. And we wanted to know if that's something that emerged really early in life. So in this set of studies, we had 14-month-olds participate in a in-lab experiment where a research assistant would hold them and gently bounce them to a beat. And the person facing that infant is either bouncing in the same way or in a different way. So I'll show the video to give you an idea of the premise. And after this movement experience, we would then see how the baby feels about the person they moved with. So we put them into a social task where they have an opportunity to help that person. So here's what that might look like. Ooh, 1 second. Here we go. So half the babies were assigned to an in-sync condition, like this little guy. And then now I'm dropping some things and seeing if he takes it upon himself to help me out in this ambiguous situation. where help is not requested, but he has to infer from the context that help is needed and then also decide that he is comfortable being the helper. And this little guy is a teenager now, I guess, but it's still very cute.
There. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oopsie.
Okay, so in this early research, what we found was that, in fact, like adults and older kids, if infants experienced what we call interpersonal synchrony, moving at the same time as that other person, then they were more likely to feel connected with that person and help them on more of those tasks. So the babies we bounced synchronously with handed back more, just over half of the objects that we dropped, and the babies that we bounced out of sync with only helped us on about 1/3 of the objects. We replicated this across a series of studies. Exploring like exactly where the decision is being made, like our baby's being put into a social mood. Doesn't seem like it. Seems like they're only helping the person that they move with and not a totally neutral stranger. But they do transfer their helpfulness to the social partner of a synchronous partner. Does that make sense? So if they move in sync with the experimenter, and beforehand they learned that the experimenter is friends with research assistant number 2, then they'll also help research assistant number 2 more, for example. So there seems to be some social decisions being made about this person maybe being part of a group that's more like your group and maybe is someone that you can approach. Yeah, all this is to say that this was my first big question about how babies are sharing music with other people and whether or not that is a social experience for them. And that's really set the stage for a lot of the research that I've continued on in my independent research labs. So yeah, indeed, not, we have this artificial lab experience where we're bringing babies in and bouncing them, but in the real world, music is a thing that babies are sharing with other people. So for example, I have 2 examples here. In the first one, we have a 2-month-old baby reacting to his parents singing.
TUVWXYZ. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me?
And here I have a video of 2 siblings having a little dance party in their home. And these particularly cute junior scientists are demonstrating a few things for us. In both of these examples, we see children responding with interest and joy and enthusiasm to musical moments that they are sharing with people that they love. So what do these events teach them about the world, and how do these shared moments lay foundation for musical engagement across the lifespan? I think are some big questions that we can slowly get at. So today I'm going to zoom into this idea of sharing music with others, different kinds of others. So I'll speak a bit at first about some of my research exploring how parents share music with their infants, and then some work looking at more like preschoolers, early childhood, and the sibling relationship with music. Then some new data exploring how grandparents share music with their children, and then zooming out a little bit to think about how these kinds of social experiences of sharing music with others happens in more of a community context as well. Okay, so in the first set of studies that I'd like to talk about, these are part of my graduate student Angela Doe's dissertation work. We're really interested in looking at how babies share music with their parents, and we've started to explore this in a few different ways. In Angela's first paper on this topic, we did a big questionnaire study with Canadian parents with babies under 2, and we asked a whole bunch of questions, especially about the amount of singing and amount of recorded music that parents were playing to their kids. We wanted to see if we could predict the parents who are like often engaging in musical activities with their babies, and whether we could make those predictions based on features of the child, like their age or gender or little personality, like temperament qualities, or if we could better predict those things from the parents themselves. Overall, just as sort of a summary, most of the sample reported that they do sing to their children daily. And we actually didn't find any effective age on that. So some people have reported that singing to kids kind of drops off after the 1 year mark. We didn't tend to see that. We also have a sample of kids that are not usually entering daycare until they're 12 months or 18 months old, depending on like because of the parental leave in Canada. That could be why we don't see a dip. But either way, we're having parents that are reporting that they are singing quite often with their babies, and also most of them are reporting playing musical recordings on a daily basis as well. In terms of predicting who is doing the most musical things, we found that the baby features, like baby's temperament and age and whatever, none of the baby specific factors predicted who was doing a lot of these things, but the parent factors did explain some of the variability. So for example, we asked parents, like, before you were a parent, how much did you listen to music? And people who reported these high levels of pre-parenthood music listening also tend to sing more now to their babies. The other really an interesting point was we asked about childhood memories of sharing music with their own parents. And this expands on some previous work as well from other research groups. But the parents who report remembering their own parents singing to them also report singing more. In terms of playing recorded music, we found again that pre-parenthood music listening predicted how much recorded music parents played, and also musicianship. And that actually is similar to something that some of Beatrice's work has shown as well. So thanks, Beatrice. Bad citation. Okay, so the other thing we were interested in this questionnaire study was how these the use of music in the home relates to infants' feelings of affective attachment with their own parent. And so that expands on other work as well. People before us have shown that parents who report singing a lot also report having higher affective attachment with their infant. This is a positive correlation. I don't want to make any claims about directionality here. But one thing that we also ask parents, we ask them to report like the songs that they sing the most frequently, and the 3 top songs. What are the songs that you sing most frequently? And also for each of those songs, how does your baby typically react? Are they dancing? Are they smiling at you? Are they looking at you? Like how much of this sort of behavioral reactivity are you noticing when you're introducing these songs in a typical week? And so through those questions, we were able to create this composite score of infant responsiveness to parent musical bits. And when we add those factors of infant responsiveness into our models, we actually predict additional variants of infant caregiver affective attachment. So above and beyond the variants explained by how much the caregiver is introducing into this musical relationship, how much the caregiver is noticing the baby responding to those things is also contributing to these feelings of affective attachment, or at least correlated with. Their responsiveness to recorded music does not have a similar effect. So this particular finding seems to be driven by infants' responsiveness to song. This idea of the baby's response shaping the relationship is something that we were really interested in exploring deeper in this data set. One of the things that we did, why do you keep singing that song? So we're trying to get at this idea of like how children are actively shaping their musical environments, for example. And so we did some qualitative coding of these freeform responses. And by and large, almost every parent is reporting that for both the live songs and the recorded music, the baby is the reason why they're doing these things. The only reason they're singing Baby Shark for the 1000th time is because the baby is responsive or is overtly requesting it. That's really what it is. They're noticing that the baby is responding in a positive way, and that's why that song stays in the repertoire. There's other factors too, like just this, it's a song that the parent likes, or it's just part of the routine. We see that maybe a little more for live song. I'm thinking like diaper change songs, for example. You might just like whip it out every time there is a particular routine thing happening. Intergenerational significance also seems to be more relevant for song than for recorded music. But by and large, the point I want to make here is that the babies are contributing to their musical environment. And I have this little quote from a parent here. She responds with big smiles to the first few bars and recognizes the song immediately and waits for me to pick her up. So that's this parent's answer to the question of like, why do you keep singing that song? Okay, so after this questionnaire study, some work that Angela is writing up right now dives deeper into this question of like how infants are shaping the musical moment, but in a lab setting. So here we're asking if we can capture this idea of the baby shaping the musical exchange in the lab. So we had 7 to 8 month old infants come into the lab. And we asked the caregivers to alternate between singing familiar and unfamiliar songs. We worked with them before they went into the lab to figure out what those songs were going to be, so they were not caught off guard. And for the unfamiliar songs, I should point out that these are songs the parent knows and is comfortable singing, but maybe just hasn't really introduced to their baby. So maybe the parent knows "Row, row, row your boat," but they've never actually sung it to their own baby. So it's unfamiliar to the baby, but something comfortable for the parent to sing. But really, we weren't super interested in the difference between familiar and unfamiliar songs. We just wanted to create some variability in how likely the baby was to be responsive. Because the key thing here was that we told the caregivers on each trial, they decided how long that trial lasted. So they could sing, if they're on trial 1 and they're singing the first song, they can choose to stop whenever they want. They can choose to keep going. They can repeat it. It's their decision when they feel like they've had enough of that song. They can signal to the RA via the video feed, and we can switch to the 30-second break period before moving on to the next trial. So from the videos that we collected, we had research assistants annotate offline a few different measures of infant responsiveness, things like how much attention the baby is paying to the parent, their rhythmic movements, how much the baby is smiling. And we are really asking whether or not the baby's responsiveness in the moment is actually shaping what the parent does. And specifically, we're interested in whether or not the parents are deciding to extend trials when babies are incredibly responsive and maybe cut trials short when babies are like disengaged. So the questionnaire kind of asks like a bigger picture, like why did you decide to sing this song again today? That's like thinking retroactively about how the baby has been responding to these songs over your like musical history. This is more like in the moment, are you deciding to continue or stop based on the baby's behavior? So here's a video example of one of our little participants.
And on that farm he had a dog, E-I-E-I-O, with a woof woof here and a woof woof there, here woof, there woof, everywhere woof woof. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
All right, so we got quite a bit of attention to the parent from that little guy, a little bit of a foot kick at the end, some rhythmic movement. And that gives you just an idea of what one trial looks like. We have this screen at the back reminding the parent what trial they're on, and then when they give us the signal, we switch that to a 30-second break screen so they know where they're at. The research assistants are outside of the room for we're monitoring everything over the cameras. Okay, so one thing that, of course, we did this behavioral annotation stuff, and I'll show you those graphs, but we also, in a post-experiment questionnaire, asked the parent, like for each of those 6 songs, what made you decide to keep going? What made you decide to stop? And those were free-form questions. And again, we see that by and large, parents are reporting that their baby is the reason they're making these decisions. Most parents are saying that the infant's response is what kept them motivated to continue, but also their responses explaining why they might stop. So we have answers like, when he sings along, I feel motivated to sing more, or baby is looking away and not smiling, and that's maybe why I would decide to move on. Okay, so for their behavioral responses, I'm going to zoom into the positivity. Smiling. Smiling is, it seems to be one of the most important behaviors from the infants in terms of predicting any of the parent behavior. So for example, we see that the infant smiling correlates with how happy parents say they feel after the whole experiment is done. So the more the baby smiled overall across the whole experiment, the happier, the more of a mood improvement we see from pre to post experiment in the parents as per self-report. But also if we annotate the displays of positive affect from the parents, we see that the more the baby smile, the more the parents smile. So there's a positive correlation between infant and parent positive affect. Importantly, we find also that baby smiles predict the length of the trial. So parents sang longer when their infants demonstrated higher rates of smiling, even after we control for other things that we expect to really impact rates of trial length. So for example, song familiarity, they might just want to sing the familiar songs more because they're more comfortable with them. So we want to make sure that we're factoring that out of this model before we say anything about the infant's role here. So this is in progress. We are analyzing a big pile of behavioral data for this right now, and we plan to look more at the time course as well, like in the moments when a parent is deciding to continue or stop. Is there like predictive behaviors from the baby in those moments versus as compared to this sort of zoomed out perspective? So we're doing some more time course stuff right now. So stay tuned for that. But this does build into this larger picture, suggesting that both in the moment and like as a broader sort of musical home environment, babies' responsiveness to their song environment is shaping that experience. Okay, so that's some of our recent work on parents and how parents are sharing music with their babies, but babies are not simply passive partners here. They're actively contributing to this musical relationship. I also wanted to talk a little bit about siblings. So I did have this paper a few years ago where we explored sibling musical play, and we actually took advantage of an old data set where data was collected, I think in the late 80s. The data may be as old as me. And these are really rich transcripts collected by Hildy Ross, where research assistants went into homes of families that had 2 children that were 2 years apart. And at the first visit, the children were 4 and 2 years of age. Then they followed up longitudinally and went back to the same homes when the children were 6 and 4 years of age. And there's just like incredibly detailed transcriptions from these exchanges describing what the children are doing and who's saying what when and what activities they're engaging with. These data were collected originally to look at sibling conflict. They've been reused to look at teaching and older sibling, like birth order effects and things like that. The nice thing about this longitudinal design is that if we want to say something about birth order, we can do it in an age-controlled way. So for example, if we want to look at the musical behaviors of firstborn children compared to secondborn children, we can compare the firstborns from time point 1 to the secondborns from time point 2, and now age is not a confound. They're both 4-year-olds. They're on a level playing field, but birth order is no longer confounded with that. So I remember I met with one of Nassim Tabasoli, who was a grad student at the time. I saw her giving a poster about how she reanalyzed these data to look for prosocial behavior. They had it looked at like how much are the older siblings and the younger siblings helping each other and comforting and sharing and doing all of these prosocial things. And I asked her if, after having looked at these transcripts, if there was anything musical in them. And she said, "Yeah, I think so. We weren't really looking for that, but I think there's something there." So I had emailed Hildy, and Hildy was like, "I don't think there's anything, but here's 20 you can sift through and see." And there was tons of musical things in here. They were dancing and hopping and singing and playing with real musical instruments and pretend musical instruments and doing all sorts of things. So my student, Rachel, really took the lead on this and pulled all of those musical moments out of the transcript so we could ask questions about how siblings are sharing music together and also how birth order impacts musical play. So one thing we looked at was the rate, like how frequent we could see different kinds of behaviors. So for example, how often are children singing alone? We could tell from the transcripts if they were singing by themselves versus with their sibling. How much are they singing alone versus how much are they dancing alone? How much are they playing with instruments themselves? And how much are they initiating in joint music making? What we are showing in this graph here is that once we're looking at that age match, like when they're both 4, we do see that the younger children, the secondborns, are doing more musical things. And we can explain this as like a scaffolding effect. Like if this younger sibling has always had this slightly older playmate encouraging them to do more complex musical things, then by the time they're also 4, they might be doing more complex musical things than the older sibling had 2 years prior, if that makes sense. So for example, when they're 4, secondborns are singing more and dancing more than firstborns did 2 years prior. So there do seem to be some effects of birth order there. Perhaps to no one's surprise, the firstborns are more likely to be the initiators of musical play. So they are usually the ones to start to be like, hey, we should sing this song, and start to sing it. And then the younger sibling joins in, or they start dancing and then the younger sibling joins in. So the leadership kind of qualities of the firstborn are reflected in that. But what we were particularly interested in was combining this coding with Nassim's coding of prosociality. And what we found there was that the siblings who did engage in more of these prosocial actions also tended to engage in more frequent musical play. So maybe this, again, this is correlational. So I'm not sure if the children who are very prosocial are also, if that encourages musical play, or if musical play encourages prosociality, or if both of these things are a marker of relationship quality or something. But there does seem to be some connection between the children who are more prosocial to each other and also doing more of these things. Yeah, I have an ongoing study led by my graduate student, Anna Guimarães, in the lab, and she is looking at whether we can look at siblings dancing together. So a bit of a deviation from the musical play in the home situation, but we're bringing kids into the lab, and we want to know if them dancing in this lab context is a social thing. So we're actually doing like a silent disco paradigm with the kids. They come in, they each have their own set of headphones. On half the trials, they hear the same music. On half the trials, they hear tempo shifted, different songs. And we're looking at things like how much they are looking at each other, whether they're imitating each other, how close they are to one another, just overall how much they're dancing and smiling, to see if they are behaving differently when the music is synchronous versus asynchronous. We don't tell them that that might be the case. We want to know if from each other's movements alone, they seem to notice that there's something different across the conditions. So here's a video of what that looks like. You can't hear anything because they're listening to music over headphones, but they're listening to stuff like Old Town Road and Shake It Off. And we intentionally selected songs that kids of this age group really enjoy, because the goal was to try to optimize the likelihood that the children would dance in a lab setting. So we try to make it as engaging as possible to encourage those movements. So yeah, we're analyzing those data now. That's just a teaser, but we are trying to continue to ask this question about sibling relationships and how they share music together. Okay, the grandparent stuff is something that we're writing up right now. And this question is one that I explored with one of my collaborators here at UTSC, Brett Ford, and students Rashmi and Catherine Tan. And we are interested in looking at how grandparents can connect virtually with their grandbabies. The music component is a bit of a manipulation. So here, what we did is we invited families to participate. We would mail grandparents the storybook that Catherine wrote, and another one of our students, Brianna, did the amazing illustrations for. So grandparents would get this little storybook in the mail, and then half of them would be assigned to the singing condition. So they would have to learn how to sing the lyrics of the book, and half of them would be assigned to the reading condition. And once grandparents received the book in the mail, we would schedule a Zoom appointment between them and their grandbaby. The research assistant would hop on the call at first just to help everybody with the tech setup, like making sure that they turn self-view off and that everyone's audio is working okay. And then the research assistant would leave the call and we would get the recordings after. So grandparents would be asked to go through the book twice through. And we did a lot of video annotation on this as well to look at how the babies reacted to what the grandparents were doing, how the grandparents reacted. And then the grandparents also filled out pre and post questionnaires about their emotional state. So here's an example of what that looked like.
They make my tummy smile with happiness, fueling me and fueling you. Look.
Certainly one of the pieces of rationale for this was to explore an underexplored relationship. We don't really know that much about how grandparents share music with their grandbabies, but also, I mean, it was certainly inspired by the pandemic, where many people could only have their grandchildren connecting with grandparents through virtual means. There's technology barriers, and there's also a question of like, how could you optimize that exchange? And maybe music and book reading is a way to optimize that exchange. So yeah, so if we look at the grandparents' self-reported happiness, we see that there's no effective condition, but overall we see that they feel better. They feel happier. They report feeling happier after the Zoom call compared to before the Zoom call. I don't have the graph for it here, but they also do report an improvement in their feelings of connectedness to their grandbaby after the Zoom call. Again, comparable from the singing and reading conditions. We have this cute little quote from one of the grandparents. Smiling did, however, show an effect of delivery type. So for example, for both the infants and the grandparents, we see that smiling is greater in the singing conditions than in the reading conditions. So yeah, and actually if we look at this is one that I also want to do some time course analyses on while we finish up the paper draft. But if we look at whether or not baby smiling predicts grandparent smiling and grandparent smiling predicts baby smiling, for example, we see that for grandparents, how much they smile, it does depend on delivery condition. They smile more because they're in the music condition, and also they smile more when their grandbaby is smiling. So both infants smiles and condition assignment seem to be driving grandparent smiling. For the babies, grandparent smiling accounts for a decent chunk of variability in baby smiling, and delivery condition doesn't explain more of that. So I think what's going on here is that if the grandparents are in the singing condition, they are smiling more. And when their babies smile, that also like goes back and forth. The babies seem to be smiling more because the grandparents are smiling more, if that makes sense. But that's something that we'll have a little more clarity on when we zoom in. Okay, so that's in prep right now. Yeah. And that leads me to my final, we're zooming out even further now to communities. And actually, I have a couple of studies that I want to talk about that look at how babies respond to music in an audience setting, because this is something that actually, I feel like it's becoming more prevalent, where you can like bring your baby to a music performance, classical music for children. This like Bach to Baby company, I think they are. Is that one the one in New York? There's some in many major cities now where this is an opportunity for families to feel like they're welcome at these musical events. And so one of our research questions was like, if a baby is coming to a musical event in the community, are they experiencing something special? I mean, certainly for adults, when we go to a live musical performance where we feel like we're getting something quite special out of that, we're connecting with the performer, we're connecting with our co-audience members, and is that still like this enriched social experience for little tiny audience members too? In our first audience study, and this is in collaboration with Haley Kreitness at Bucknell University, and Brina Bierzowska, who was the musician actually in our work here. We wanted to explore how infants and caregivers coordinate attention when they are watching a performance together. So if you bring your baby to a musical performance and they're sitting on your lap and you're watching this performance together, are you still connecting with each other? Are you still sharing this moment? And so what we did is we had babies come to this little performance space at the USC Center in Toronto, and they would sit on their parents' lap. Brina and her musical team would perform from a composition they were arranging called The Music Box, which was an opera for babies. And we would have them sing, they sang 2 songs for this study. One was a lullaby and the other one was a play song. And we also had a manipulation of how much we wanted the parents to add to the experience. So we had this like interactivity piece. So they would sing the lullaby and the play song, and then we'd have a short break and then they'd sing it again. And in one half of the performance, we would ask the parents to just be passive and just hold their babies like you're just the chair. And in the other interactive half of the performance, we would ask the parents to be more interactive, like, rock the baby to the beat, like, clap their little hands or like sing along or whatever. So there was sort of this like active engagement versus passive watching. One thing that we looked at was how much attention the babies paid to the performance itself. So we had a bunch of video cameras set up all over the place, so we could code from the cameras whether the babies had forward facing attention towards the performance, but we also coded how much attention the parents paid to the performance. If we just look at the babies first, we see that The babies are paying more attention to the play song performances in the green. They're paying less attention to the lullaby performances. We don't see an effective interactivity here, but this effective play songs capturing infant attention more readily than lullabies does parallel stuff we see in lab studies where it's moms singing lullabies or play songs to their babies in a dyadic context. So even though it's this big noisy environment, the musical properties of the performance, and I mean, I can't just say that it's musical, maybe it's something about the multimodal experience of play songs compared to lullabies is more attention capturing. And I think especially interesting in this paper, we also looked at how infant and caregiver attention coordinated. So for this, what we did is we looked at all the moments where the baby and their caregiver had shared attention, like they're both looking at the performance or they're both looking at each other. How many of those moments do we see? And how does that compare to this baby compared to some other parent in the audience at the same time? And if we see that there's more consistency in attention between baby and their true parent compared to baby and like a random parent from the audience, then maybe this says something about there being like a connection still between the baby and their caregiver while they're watching this shared thing. And in fact, we do see that those true caregiver pairs, we see more infant adult attention consistency than the random ones. So I think the point here is that when babies are at these big noisy audience experiences, they are engaged with the performance. Like I mean, also these are really high rates of attention. Like I didn't really point that out, but like in the play song, they were riveted. Like they're like watching this thing 80% of the time. But also they're still connected with their parents while they're doing this. This is still a social experience for them as well as like a immersive experience, I guess. In our second audience study, we had the opportunity to use the live lab at McMaster University, which is this really exciting performance research space. So at McMaster University, they have this beautiful concert hall with 100 seats and a big stage and all kinds of fancy equipment. We used a bit of the equipment. We didn't take advantage of everything. They have all kinds of fun stuff like EEG and motion tracking. But what we did take advantage of was heart rate monitors. So on some of the babies, on about half in each of the performances, we had heart rate monitors attached to the babies. We also they have response tablets in the space. So we were able to mount the response tablets on the chair in front of each baby with the screen facing away from the baby. So the baby doesn't see the screen, but this just allowed us to get a really nice clean video of each baby at the performance space. So we're just using the back cameras on each tablet to get like baby specific video recordings. And what we did here was we were asking about the importance of a performance being live. Like we'll pay thousands of dollars to go see Taylor Swift on stage, but we're not going to pay thousands of dollars to see the Cineplex viewing of the Eras Tour. So, there's something special about a live performance. Do babies agree? So in two of the performances, Brina and her team performed a 12-minute performance of their music box opera. And the other thing that we were able to take advantage of with the live lab was the like high fidelity recording equipment there. So we were able to get a really nice video of the performance, clean audio. We had like microphones on each performer. And what we did is we were able to rent a big giant projector screen and put it at exactly the same place on the stage where the performers had been for the live show, put speakers underneath where each performer had stood and like broadcast the audio recordings from that. So the new set of babies who came to the two recorded performances were getting as close of a visual and auditory experience to the live as we could create. But of course, it's not live. So you might be wondering what an opera for babies is. So here's a little snippet from one of the songs.
The itsy bitsy spider went down the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Tickle, 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 tickle. Don't worry, my little one.
It might be exactly what you're imagining. I don't know. But what do the baby videos look like? So this is one of those tablets mounted on the screen in front of it. And from that, we were able to capture information about how much attention the baby is paying to the show. Like we are capturing forward-facing attention. And we can look at overall how much time are they spending forward-facing, looking at the show. But we can also like look at the bursts of attention and how long those bursts are. So for example, if a baby is looking for 5 seconds and then looks away and looks for 10 seconds and then looks away, the average burst of attention is in the middle of that. But maybe the baby is looking and just not looking away for an extended period of time, and then they would have longer uninterrupted bursts of attention. So here's what that might look like.
Out came the sun and dried up the rain. And
Okay. We did also have the heart rate data from a subset of the babies. And what we did with that is we looked at the heart rate similarity between pairs of audience members. So within a performance, how much does one baby's heart rate changes correlate with every other baby at that performance? And is that overall average correlation across their heart rates different in the live performances compared to the recorded performances? Okay, so for attention, babies like the live show better, so they will also pay the big bucks for the live Eras tour. And again, we see pretty high levels of attention overall. So this is a 12-minute performance, I should say. I think this was our biggest like crazy scientist thing to do, to put that many babies in a room and expect them to pay attention for 12 minutes, but they did. And of course, the overall attention is greater than in the recorded condition, where we are seeing like they're really only paying attention to about half of it. And we see a similar story. Well, this is a quantity story, I guess, but we see a quality of attention story when we look at those attentional bursts. So if the babies are in the live condition, then on average, their bursts of attention were held for twice as long as the babies in the recorded audience condition. So the attention of the babies in the recorded condition is lower overall, but also more interrupted. And the heart rate data also tells us an interesting story of like shared experience. We see that the babies in the live condition do have more correlated heart rate changes than the babies in the recorded audience condition. This could be because of the attention thing, I think, like the fact that they are paying more attention in the live condition might explain why the heart rate changes are more similar, because their experience is more similar. But I think it still speaks to this live performance shaping the audience experience in a different way than recorded can. Okay, I think that's it for audience stuff. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. That's my barrage of studies to throw at you. And I think the theme behind all of them is really that music is this everyday part of babies' everyday lives, especially song, I think. And that infants are responding to music with interest and engagement, and that their babies are not passive recipients to the music in their world. They are shaping the music that they're exposed to, and their responsiveness to it drives those changes. But also that these are social things. So when they are being sung to by their caregiver, or having a dance party with their sibling, or like listening to grandma sing over Zoom, these are opportunities for them to connect with those people in a meaningful way. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions. And this is my lab. So thank you to all the amazing people that made all this work possible, and our many, many junior scientists.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna clap on behalf of everybody. What an amazing body of work, and just knowing how much logistical work goes into these experiments. And I just cannot imagine what you guys went through to bring 100 parents and kids into one auditorium and have them listen to music. I think that you can, everybody, you can type your questions, or if you want to like just type or just say I have a question, I can also unmute or allow you to talk. Jason, is that correct? People can speak loudly?
Yeah, they should be able to raise their hand and we can unmute them.
Okay, great. I'm gonna start the questions, and then I see Florencia has one too. In the live lab study, is there any indication of like rhythmic entrainment among the babies that would have any, I guess, implication for your earlier pro-social, like when we go to concerts, we feel like a group together when we come out of that performance. Do you kind of see any resemblance of that in infants?
That's a good question. We did code for rhythmic movements, or at least we planned to. I think we were like, this attention and heart rate stuff, this is enough for a paper. This is huge. But I don't think we found a difference in overall rhythmic movement in the live versus reported conditioning. You know, I'd have to revisit that with Haley. I don't remember what ended up happening with the rhythmic movement stuff. What I will say is that these were little babies, so I doubt that they were synchronizing with each other. We don't really see very good like synchronization abilities until much later. But I think if they were dancing, if they were just like overall dancing more, if the one, yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if that speaks to any of the shared experience. Like, are the moments when they are dancing the same? Like, is that
the same? Yeah.
Yeah, we did look at sort of like how the music drives bursts of attention as the music unfolds. There's some cool supplementary graphs in that paper where we have like the whole performance over time and then like how many babies are looking at every moment and like there's some dips and there's some peaks. And there wasn't like any super obvious musical moment, like musical features that were driving infant attention, but it is still really interesting. You still can see like there are these moments where baby's attention was captured. Anecdotally, like just being there, like it felt like especially if we had a song where they started with something instrumental and then all of a sudden Brina would come in with like a big pitch change or something, like there was like a hush and all the adults would kind of look at each other like whoa, because you know there's like movement and there's always like one or two babies that are crying. It sounds like it's more, but it's always like one or two. And there were these like moments of hush. But I think that gets captured a little bit in that graph. But with the rhythmic movement, we haven't. I know that we coded it, but I don't think we looked at whether or not the moments of rhythmicity were like aligned. Like,
Online.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Florencia, why don't you go ahead and ask your question? I think I managed to unmute you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I have actually two questions. The first one is if you have observed any foot kicking or any other motor responses with familiar songs that really tell you that the child is either enjoying or engaging with that familiar song.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can speak to that. Actually, Haley and I had a paper a few years prior where we had babies come into the lab and listen to recordings of familiar music and unfamiliar music. And in that study, we found that babies paid more attention to the familiar music and also danced more to the familiar music than the unfamiliar music. So there was more rhythmic movement overall to the familiar songs than the unfamiliar songs. I should definitely ask Angela we'll look at that in the data set that she's currently sifting through as well. But I think with that data set, we weren't so interested in the differences in their responsiveness to familiar, unfamiliar. That was more like a way to create variability in infant responsiveness than anything else. But you know, I would expect to see more rhythmic movements in the familiar, just replicating what Haley and I found in that more controlled, like recorded audio experiment, but something we definitely need to check. Thank you.
You have another question, Florencia?
Yeah, can I ask the other question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And just a little comment. My team and I are currently running a study on dance behavior, and we are also looking at whether this dance types are synchronized between the parent and the child, and also
cool.
if familiar songs make them dance more. But my other question is if there's any clue that parents have reported that make them either stop or continue the singing.
Like in the freeform responses, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we sort of created this large category called infant response. So like if they said anything about the infant responding, and that could be movement, smiles, attention, it counted as infant response. But I don't think our coders sifted it down further than that, that we could easily do that, I think, because if they're the example quote that I gave was like, when he sings along, I feel motivated to sing more. So like that's an example of vocalization. But if they're like, oh, they look at me longer, then we can code that as an intentional thing. So yeah, we didn't break it down by responsiveness type, but we certainly could. That would be useful because if we find overall that the smiles is the thing that seems to drive their behavior the most, like from our behavioral coding, are we going to see the same story in their behavioral in their reform responses? That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was
Thank
really
you.
interesting, by the way.
Thank you.
Beatrice, go ahead. I figured we should give you the space given the
Sure.
overlap of work.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laura. It was wonderful to hear you and to, put the studies together. I wanted to ask about the sibling study. I find that really fascinating. A few years ago, we had a student here at USC who did a study on music making in cars in families with at least 3 children, because we spend a lot of time in cars here. And one of the things she found was that, some children used music, there was some shared music, of course, between siblings, but in some cases, there were children who wanted to differentiate themselves from their siblings to call mommy's attention or dad's attention. I wonder if you saw any of that in your data, or I know that that's not what you're looking for, but if you recall any of that in your videos, just curious.
For the in-lab one or the like longitudinal thing?
I think both, if you saw any spots of that. I'm just curious because I don't think anyone else has looked at that as far as I know. I haven't been keeping up with that data, but
So in the transcript stuff with the longitudinal, like firstborn, secondborn stuff, we don't have video. We don't even have audio. We have like detailed transcriptions because it was like data from the 1989. So they didn't have anything but the detailed transcriptions. But from that, we did identify like joint versus solo. So we only classified it that much. Like I think we could definitely like in the paper we do have data about like how much of this joint play solo play are they doing. I don't know, does that maybe indirectly speak to it? We don't really the parents were not really engaging with the siblings in that set. It was like 45 minutes of the siblings playing together, and the parents might be around, but the goal of it was like mostly the children are playing. Yeah, in the in-lab study, so Anna has data from 20 dyads now, and they're in the data coding phase. We are looking at imitation, but again, we can look at this kind of like leadership thing. Like I think we can definitely look at like the older sibling is the one who's like grabbing the little one and spinning them around, for example, or if we see it imitated behavior, is the older sibling the one who starts it. But this idea of differentiating, like I think we probably could think about it a little bit, because if they're just doing very distinctive behaviors, now they know their parent can't hear the song that they're singing too, so I'm not sure. And we do try to make the parents in the room, but we like actively have tried really hard to make them not engage the parent. So like the parents wearing decoy headphones, because in the pilot study, the kids were like, Mama, listen to this music. You don't have headphones, and like trying to put it on the mom. And then, we also had the parent filling out our Qualtrics form on their device. And then that was way too distracting. So we had to go like old school clipboard and paper. And now the kids totally ignore the parent. Like now that she's got headphones on and she's busy with a boring clipboard, they leave her alone. But that's not to say they never look at her. So is the idea like if they're trying to get the parents' attention, that may be where they like demonstrate a unique dance move or something?
yeah, that's what we saw. Sometimes, they're choosing, but in this case, there are more than two, right? There were three. So maybe that's what it is. I was just curious,
Yeah.
about the times they're together and the times that they're like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this other human being. I'm just curious, but but thank you for clarifying. I thought you had videos of the diets and it was all
Right.
transcripts.
It was all transcripts, unfortunately, but
It's still really impressive to be able to go
Mhm.
back and look at interaction at that time.
yeah, I mean, I think like there are, I don't know that there's, Angela's doing something now where we're using some in-home video data from the play project that NYU is leading to look, but that's like one kid. There's no, I don't think there's any sibling things in there. But yeah, if somebody has some videos of children dancing at home, I would love I would love that. Yeah, I guess well one thing, Beatrice, is like one of our big questions with that in-lab study is like if they are behaving differently when it's the same music that they're listening to or different music that they're listening to, and they don't know, like if it's an asynchronous trial, we didn't tell them that it is, but if they feel kind of disconnected from the other and they feel like they're doing a lot of different things from what that kid is doing, or like if they can detect that they're not aligned, we're curious to see if that's where we find less imitation of each other, maybe more of this sort of like signaling uniqueness. A bit of yeah, different framing, but yeah, no, that's really cool. I know we've cited some stuff about kids singing in the cars, but I'll make sure that we have that one that you mentioned. That sounds really exciting.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. This was fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beatrice. Ellen, go ahead. I think we can take one more question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. This was a really interesting talk. I'm curious a little bit more about the heart rate correlation that you did. What like can you explain a little bit more like what the process was of correlating the heart rates and kind of the way you broke down that time series? And did you look like instant, like moment to moment, or more like at like whole songs?
We did instantaneous heart rate
Okay.
across the whole 12 minutes. It was a bit of a like low, like a kind of a, I want to say quick and dirty. I don't know if it was quick and dirty, but it was sort of like across the entire 12 minutes, every baby would have instantaneous heart rate. And then every single baby, so like baby number one, we would correlate their instantaneous heart rate with baby number two and baby number three and baby number four from the same performance. So every possible pairwise comparison was calculated. And then the overall thing that I plotted was like, actually, maybe I can put that back up. So like each of these dots is like every possible comparison of two babies at the same performance. And so yeah, the R.08 here, like of course that's very low. We don't expect it to be a very high correlation. We're just like correlating 12 minutes of instantaneous heart rate for every possible pair of babies. But overall, that's different from what we see when we do the same calculation with the babies in the audience condition.
Got it. I'm curious to, sometimes with heart rate measurements, if someone's moving a lot, you can have some like noise or inaccuracy. Did you like have to try and account for any like movement noise or anything like that?
I think we did some smoothing. Sorry.
It's okay.
Trying-
I know these are very technical. I'm asking because I'm doing a heart rate correlation right now. And so I'm just curious seeing mine is with people performing music.
Right.
And so I'm just curious based off of like what you've done,
Yeah.
what you've seen.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
the
No,
heart rate through wrist, or did you have a heart band on chest?
no, it was on their chest. Yeah.
Okay, so
It was on their
That
chest.
would be really nice. Okay.
It
Got
was
it.
on their chest. I can go back to our analysis scripts. One of my graduate students took the lead on the heart rate analyses while I was on maternity leave. So I don't remember exactly like
That's
which.
totally fine. I know I was asking a
Yeah.
really specific question.
We can definitely get you an answer though if you email me. I'm sure we have the analysis scripts or like the names of the packages. They're probably something is probably reported in the paper too, but I can get you more clarity on that for sure.
Okay,
But yeah,
that would be really awesome.
we definitely put it on their chest. Like that was part of the like the team of research assistants trying to stick as many things on babies as we could and before the performance started.
I'm sure
Yeah.
that was fun.
I will say that we also put skin conductance sensors on their feet, but those were a disaster. Like they did not stay on. So that's not in the paper.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so I think we are at the end of our time. Apologies to those who still have questions. If you want to send them to me, I can share a summary with Laura, and if she has time, she can answer, get back to us if it's something quick. But I just want to take time to first congratulate you on this amazing body of work with again, I know how much work goes into these experiments and your contribution to the field and sharing your time and work with us today and for being with us. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
everybody.
much for having me.
And we'll share the recording. Have a wonderful
Okay.
afternoon. Take care, everyone. Thanks.